I'm here to tell you that your elementary school teacher was wrong. People do judge books by covers, and people will judge the quality of your online customer presentations by not just the quality of the content, but the quality and engagement factor around the visuals. Now, producing these visuals requires this awesome combination of hardware and software and technology that will probably leave you like me, bewildered and confused. My job here is to save you some time by boiling down what I've done to create the visual interest in my presentations, so hopefully it'll help you create the same in yours. As always, my name is David Premer, and welcome to another episode of Sales Lab Live. Now, this is going to be a good episode. It's going to be a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit more unplugged, so to speak, where I'm going to take you on a bit of a tour of the technology I use to put on not just these Sales Lab Lives, but the online presentations and so on that I do to create that visual interest. Because I know a lot of you, especially my clients and people who have seen this, have said, David, how do you do that thing where like you're showing slides or you put yourself like in the bubble there? How do you do things like, if I'm doing an exercise in one of my trainings, I say, hey, look, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do this thing. Or maybe sometimes, for example, I'm doing like a little break in my sessions for 10 minutes, and I have a little countdown timer there. So I want to show you all of these things, all the kind of the little tricks, the little camera angles as I kind of go back and forth, as I, show my browser, as I like switch to the iPad to create this visual interest. How is it all done? I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible for you. And I'm going to give you a bunch of resources that you can use afterwards to kind of do your own research. I have to say, this whole experience of setting this up, like you, was a kind of a fortuitous thing that happened over the course of the pandemic where my entire business moved online and I had to do all of my training and presentations. It started with just me, my trusty laptop, my headset plugged in, and delivering stuff, and that was fine. But then, of course, as you go through the pandemic, and now as we're all kind of presenting virtually far more than ever before, creating that visual interest is really important to be able to keep people engaged throughout your presentation. And look, I'm not there to discount, there's a whole conversation we could have about your content and your slides and your body language and all that kind of stuff. But I'm here to talk about the technology, because it's not as easy as you think. And I have to say, the order of operations, like the technology that I added for myself, I would probably do in a much different order now. So I'm going to try to kind of explain all, like, what do I have, and give you an idea of like the order I would do it in again, if I had the choice. And again, this is like an ongoing thing. I'm always like adding and tweaking things, and the people and the resources that I follow online are all doing the same thing. So let's get into it. I want to show you, just to kind of start off, what I'm looking at. So I want you to see, I'm going to show you a slide here. I want you to see what I am sitting in front of. So you can see here my laptop. Now I'll try to point out some things and I'll kind of show you a little bit of technology. So this is what I'm sitting in front of. It's not a live shot, obviously. I took the snapshot. You can see my friend Jason Bay. I was doing a chat with him on Zoom, so you can see him up there in the little teleprompter. I should say that the iMac that you see on the side, like the big screen that I use to edit videos and stuff, that is actually not part of this equation. I use that for nothing specifically related to my presentations and going live. That is strictly a workhorse machine that I use to do, like, as a big screen to do all sorts of video editing. But you can see there's a combination here. I got like microphones and lights and a little kind of switch pad down at the side of the laptop, and more dongles and cables than I cared to admit. If you want to see, I think I teased this when I posted this on LinkedIn. This is the reverse angle. Right, so this is kind of like from behind the camera. You can see I have a camera shooting through a teleprompter, kind of to the back of the room, so you can see what I have. I am literally here in a basement office. Thankfully I have a window. My basement is kind of above ground, but I never keep the window open. It just looks out over to my neighbor's house. So the good news is it's kind of like a casino in here. I can kind of create this environment that kind of stays consistent. And I will mention as I go through the content today that if you are blessed to have a room with lots of amazing natural light, then you might not need some of these things, right? But if you're like me in a kind of a controlled space, or you want to have a controlled space, then the setup I'm going to show you can be really, really effective. So with that, what I'll do is I'm going to go through my little checklist of content, a checklist of equipment, and I'll kind of step you through it, and I'll try to kind of go back to some of the pictures and show you where this exists on the spectrum of equipment, so you can kind of see where it all fits in. But this is kind of, as I was thinking about it, this is the way I would orchestrate it today if I had the choice. Now again, a lot of it is not just the hardware software, it's how you use it. how you kind of can use the switchboards and all the equipment to kind of move back and forth and create that visual interest. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start talking about the equipment here. So this is what I would kind of refer to as kind of like the level 1, like the visual interest basics, right? If you just had to start out from scratch, what would you do? And the first thing that you're going to need is the software to control all of these little things, like the bubbles and all the little different scenes and overlays and all that kind of stuff. And for that I use, and I tried to actually put the cost in here too, so you can get a sense. For that I use a piece of software called Cam Live. Now, for those of you who are on a Mac, you're going to be really happy because, and if you're on a PC, not so happy because Cam Live is a Mac-only platform. But if you are on a Mac or a PC platform, you can also use a piece of technology called OBS, which is also very popular. OBS is also open source and it's free. Cam Live, there's a subscription fee that you pay based on, I think there's like a few different plans. You can pay by the year, pay by the month. I'm on like the $40 a month plan. I pay, $40 a month US for the service. And I find it's good. I never got into OBS. I just like the simplicity of Cam Live. But there's communities for both these products, and so by all means, like pick one and go forth. Now, what I might actually do here is show you what Cam Live looks like, because I think if I show it to you, and it's fun, I've never done this before. I'm going to turn on what they call live demo mode. So hopefully now you can see. Hopefully you can see what I'm seeing. It's hard for me to tell because every time I switch away, it's going to look a bit different. I think you can see what I'm seeing on the live feed. So what you can see, so you can see the Facebook window with my live videos kind of behind the scenes. That's the white that you're seeing. But Cam Live, you can see has a whole bunch of windows. So I have like my live window that I'm kind of talking into now. And you can see, I have different sound inputs. I have different overlays. So you can see where I have like my logo in the bottom right-hand corner where I can kind of add that and remove that. And then the most important thing is on the top left-hand side, I have all of these scenes. And what I do is I create like a different scene, like almost like a different overlay for the thing that I want to show. So for example, if I want to go back to the PowerPoint slide, you see here I have a little overlay called PowerPoint. I can click PowerPoint and that takes me back to kind of the PowerPoint view. If I want to, have a shot of my main browser, I have that here. I can go back to my main camera. If I want to go over to my iPad, you can see I have like a little iPad, which my iPad is connected through USB-C into, my setup. So I can, draw something on the iPad and you can see that there. And I also have, all the little overlays for my breaks. I also have overlays for all sorts of videos that I share during my my training and presentation. So I create these scenes for everything that I need. And I'm going to see if I will go back to the, is it the default scene? Or actually, I want to go back to my main camera. All right. So hopefully we're back at the main camera. So you see, I create all these overlays, and it's very easy. An overlay is just a combination of like camera, graphics. You can create, all kind of the like the video editing, like your title and stuff. You can do that all. I am actually, what you see with my presentation is actually a very low level of sophistication as far as these overlays. People do amazing things with these overlays. So you basically create an overlay for all like kind of the different scenes that you want. You can even see here on the right hand side, I can kind of do like a pan and zoom kind of thing. So if I want to like zoom it, oh, that's too close. Zoom in my camera, I can do that. If I want to change even like the temperature of the camera, you can see here, I can do that. And it's all done through software, irrespective of all the lighting. So Cam Live, I found, is a really great solution. There's a ton of stuff behind the scenes that you can do. You can use it to stream to your favorite platforms. But Cam Live is a really great tool to start out by creating those scenes for the visual interest. The other thing that it does, which is really important, is when you're using like a Zoom, or it doesn't matter, Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, whatever it is, what you're actually doing when you go into that software is, instead of selecting your webcam, whatever it is, to be your camera, what you're going to do is you're going to basically select the output from Cam or OBS or whatever it is as your, what they call a virtual camera. So you can see here when I go to output under Cam, I have my virtual camera turned on. And what that means is now whenever I'm in my favorite app like Zoom or even my Facebook Live, I basically select the Cam Live virtual camera as my camera. I'm going to get out of live demo mode here and so we'll come back to it. I select that as my camera. So Ecamm Live then becomes my camera, and I can kind of point that camera at whatever I want. And again, that camera is a virtual camera because it's a combination of an actual physical camera, some overlays. If I had different, actually different camera angles from different physical devices, I could do that too. So that's kind of like the workhorse software piece of it. There is also, if I go back to the PowerPoint slides here, there is also an extra little piece of software called Loopback, which is like a one-time perpetual license thing. I paid $100 US for it. And Loopback, I would say just Google it. Loopback is for basically like it's Ecamm but for audio. Because you think about now I'm doing a whole bunch of presentations. There's different audio sources. There's the audio source that's coming through my videos in Ecamm. There's audio coming through my microphone. If I'm doing a Zoom meeting, there's audio that's coming from Zoom, right, into my Ecamm recordings and so on. And so Loopback is a tool that lets you basically create all of these like virtual microphones and harmonize all of these audio sources. So again, there's a whole bunch of tutorials. If you just do like a Google search for like Ecamm Live Loopback, you'll see all these integration videos. But those are kind of like the two pieces of software that you need. Now, onto the hardware. The thing that I love this. I love this piece of hardware. It is so amazing. It is so versatile. It is called an Elgato Stream Deck. So Elgato is the name of the company. Stream Deck is the name of the product. And just to show you what I have here, it's like a little mini switchboard. So it's connected via USB. Let me see if I can show it to you here. It's a little mini switchboard, and each of these little screens, it actually comes in 3 different sizes. This is the medium size. The bigger size has like 32 buttons on it. And what it allows you to do is basically program these buttons to do whatever you want. So for example, this button here says main camera. If I push this button, it's going to go over to the PowerPoint, see? And now main camera. So basically I have these buttons tethered to the various scenes and overlays that I've created in Ecamm Live. So this is integrated with Ecamm Live. It's not like the same product. If I want to, for example, throw the 90-second timer on the screen, I just hit my 90-second timer button, which I've created. And again, like the nice thing is, and I have to, with my camera, I have to cover my eyes because otherwise it's going to think it's a person. You see, like now it's focused on me. Now it's focused on the camera, on the product, right? Pretty cool. I can actually have forward and back buttons to actually change the buttons as I navigate through. So this can do all sorts of stuff on your computer. Even if you're not doing any kind of live streaming, think of this as like a crazy power programmable mouse that can do anything. And in fact, I have this all hooked up to my, to even like my lighting system. So for example, if I want to change the color of the background of the lights, I hit the red button and it goes red. And you want it green, now it's green. And it does that, you want it soft blue. I did that because I programmed these things. Even the lights that I have in front of me, if I were to show you back to, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. So the lights that I have in front of me now, I can actually control, first of all, like I can control these 2 lights. For example, if I turn off the lights in front of me, you can see how, the camera's kind of adjusting. But I do that all through the pad here. And you can program macros. So as soon as I sit down to do my work and I'm going to do like a live stream or a presentation, I hit one button, it turns everything on. So that, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to go back to the list here. That Elgato Stream Deck is an amazing piece of technology. I think it's platform agnostic, PC, Mac, it's the same thing. And I keep it there. And what happens is you program it however you want, and then it makes it really easy while I'm talking, because I now have like finger memory for where the things are on the screen. I can just very seamlessly be talking, go in and out of the slides, the presentation, back to the browser, back to the iPad, and then back to my main view, throw my 60-second timer on, and I can do that all very seamlessly while I'm here talking to you. So the Elgato Stream Deck, super important and critical piece of the puzzle. One thing I will mention in the kind of the next 2 pieces of hardware really have to do with, and I come back here, really have to do with giving PowerPoint presentations. And oftentimes when I'm giving a PowerPoint presentation, you need more real estate than just what appears on your screen or your laptop. Like right now, I'm just running this mostly, off of my laptop. I'll talk about the teleprompter here that I'm actually looking at you in the eyeball here just in a second. But when you're running a presentation, oftentimes it's nice to be able to have the presenter view in front of you so I can see my next slide, I can see the next point. but then also like have the presentation, the live view be blasted to like another screen. For a long time, I was using my iPad. So like I have an iPad, I think this is like an iPad Air 4. I got it less than a year ago, so it's relatively new. And I was plugging that in via USB to my laptop and using like the Mac sidecar feature to create like a secondary screen. And now they've replaced sidecar with something else, but it's basically very similar. And I found that experience was like super glitchy, super kludgy. Sometimes it would conk out, sometimes it would freeze, like it, and I've heard other people say the same thing. It is not reliable as a secondary screen. Now, I will say there have been times where I've had to give presentations on the road. I was on vacation and I don't have time to bring the whole setup here. And so bringing my iPad and a laptop allowed me to get that 2-screen setup, and it worked great. And so the idea is if I'm giving a PowerPoint presentation, what I'm doing is I am sharing the screen from the iPad or whatever the secondary screen is that actually has the audience view, and I'm looking at like my regular view here. So you can absolutely do that, but again, I would caution you, if I go back to my slide deck here, beware using the iPad as a second monitor, not 100% reliable. But I'll tell you what has been a godsend, and this is the cheapest piece of hardware I have on the whole list today, which was super impactful and really, really helpful to solve this problem without the iPad being my secondary monitor. And that is, if I go forward here, an HDMI dummy dongle. And what is that? Like, you can actually see that on the screen in the top right-hand corner there. It's literally like a little, like a little USB size kind of dongle, like very, very small. And it plugs into the HDMI port on my laptop. Or if you have an HDMI port, it plugs into the HDMI port. And it makes your computer think that it's connected to an HDMI monitor, when of course it's not. It's just this like little dongle nub here, right? And so what I do is when I run my PowerPoint presentations, I send the audience view out to this little HDMI dongle. So back to like this view here, I actually, what you're seeing on the screen here is the output on this HDMI dongle, which is actually a screen that I actually doesn't exist and I can't see other than when I'm doing this with you and I switch to it. So it's great because it's not another screen. It doesn't take up really any system resources. It's super cheap. And the fake resolution of that HDMI screen can be whatever you want. It can be super high resolution, and when I share it out, it looks really, really great to you. So as a level 1, this is what I would recommend if you're looking to create a little bit more of that visual interest. We haven't even touched camera and microphone yet. Like, use whatever webcam you have, use whatever headset mic or whatever you have. This is level 1. Now, I'm not saying you should stop at level 1, but this is just level 1 if you wanted kind of that basic setup. So Ecamm Live, Loopback, the Stream Deck, and an HDMI dongle. And that's kind of optional. It depends on what you're presenting, and off you go. One thing I will mention though is that if you're doing this on Zoom, and you can see like when I actually do my online presentations on Zoom now, there's the share feature, right, where you can kind of share your screen. The good thing about doing that in Zoom is that it actually shares your screen at like full resolution of the screen. So if I'm on my camera now and the camera is like 720p or whatever it is, it's, Zoom is kind of putting it at whatever that resolution is. And I will tell you, if you're on a Zoom with more than 3 people, even if you have like HD output set on Zoom, it actually degrades this. It's not really even 720p. The quality is actually worse. When you use the share feature on Zoom, it actually takes your screen and outputs it at like the full resolution. So it's super clear, okay? But you'll notice I don't do that. What I do when I want to share a presentation is I use Ecamm Live. The downside, and this is kind of the rabbit's hole you're going to go into, the downside is that when you share it, the resolution is not going to be as high as if you use the share screen feature in Zoom natively. 2 things to keep in mind if you're going to do that. Number 1, you can actually, if you have a paid Zoom account, I didn't realize this, you can ask them to bump up the native resolution of your webcam to 720p, right? There's no setting for you to do this, at least when I was doing it. There's no setting for you to do it. You have to contact Zoom support and ask them for them to do it on the back end for you. And if you have a super crazy paid account, you can actually get them to bump that up to 1080p. What that's going to do, it's going to allow you to do things like share your presentation, share screens, spreadsheets, all that kind of stuff in a way that that promotes as good a resolution as you can. It won't be as good as actually sharing your screen on Zoom and taking over the other person's screen, but it makes it a lot easier to create this visual interest back and forth. So as long as your slides aren't like super fine print detail and people aren't looking at specific numbers on spreadsheets, then this way of doing it is far better. The other nice thing is that Ecamm Live has a built-in record capability. So whenever you go live to something, or whenever you're doing something, you can hit record in Ecamm. And so right now I am recording this session over Ecamm. So I'm going to get a full like 4K, 1080, whatever it is, like output of this, which I can use later to edit and do whatever I want to do. So again, I'm giving you the crash course here. I know there's like a lot of detail behind the scenes. So that is level 1, right? Let's get now into level 2 here. Okay, now I say level 2 depends a little bit on your lighting. If you have an amazing, above ground office with natural light flooding in, you may not need some of the, the lighting and things that I'm going to show you maybe as we get to level 3. I say depending on your lighting, if your lighting is good, then then level 2 you won't require any lighting. I say if you're like me, some of the lighting stuff that you hit in level 3 you might want to have in level 2. But let's go through level 2 here for a second. So what do I recommend? Microphone. So what am I talking to you on now? And you can actually see this in this view. I am talking to you on the Blue Yeti Pro broadcast setup. It's basically like a Blue Yeti mic that you can see above the screens there hovering above. If I tap it here in the live view, and you can see like as I get closer to it, the sound gets a little bit better. So I have that Blue Yeti hanging above the scenes there. You don't have to use a Blue Yeti. You can use whatever, high quality microphone you like. I see people that have the microphone in the shot with them. That's okay too. I think if I had to do it all over again, because actually the Blue Yeti was one of the first pieces of technology I bought, I might actually get like a lavalier mic and attach it to my camera. So it would just, clip to my lapel. So if I move backwards and forwards, like throughout the room, you're not going to get any kind of, strange, echoing or ghosting, on the microphone. The thing that I will tell you that I really love though about the Blue Yeti is that it's got an audio monitor feedback. So there's a headphone jack in the Blue Yeti that can kind of come out and you can put it in your ears and I can hear myself speak, right? So usually when you're on a microphone and you're on like a regular kind of, streaming setup, and you have your headphones in, like I can hear you speaking, but when I speak, I don't hear anything. This I can hear when I speak. So if I come closer to the mic, farther away from the mic, I can kind of monitor the audio levels, and that is a really, really, really great feature. It gives me confidence that you're hearing what I'm hearing. And if I decide to mute my mic for whatever reason, there's a mute button on it, I can hear that too. So I really, really like that. One thing I will mention, because I actually have this here under my next step of level 2, I have these cheap audio sport headphones that I got off Amazon for $20. And, you'll see these in my ears. They're clear. They wrap around the back. So they sit nicely in my ear. And they are actually meant to be worn behind the neck. And there's actually like a little strap that kind of, can kind of clip in there. So it's nice. It creates a nice clean view. And I actually just on Amazon got like a 6-foot audio extension cable that goes from my Blue Yeti all the way down the chair behind me, all the way back up. So I can hear everything. It actually blocks out. There's some noise canceling a little bit, just physical noise canceling. So it blocks out the noise. I'm dialed in here. I'm speaking to people. And maybe you can tell that I'm wearing them. Maybe you can't. They're clear. They're unobtrusive. So I really like these just, as a cheap addition to use with kind of the audio monitor where I can get confidence of what's happening on the audio front. The video front, again, when I started this, I was just using the webcam that came with my camera. And then I upgraded. Actually, do I have it here? I probably have it here on the floor somewhere. I upgraded to like the standard like Logitech 920C webcam, which was better than the webcam that came out of the computer. And I was actually running with that for like a long time. But when you upgrade to like a proper, digital SLR camera and use it as your webcam, it's like, I couldn't believe the difference. And that's what I'm using right now. So from a camera perspective, you want to know what I'm using. I am using the Sony ZV10, very popular mirrorless DSLR camera used by a lot of vloggers and streamers. I think the predecessor to this is the ZV1. I think it costs about $1,000. Again, there's lots of cameras that you can use. Even if you have a good DSLR camera that doesn't have video output capabilities, you can use that with the next piece of technology that I'm going to share with you. But the reason I like the Sony ZV10 is because it has the ability to charge over USB, so I don't have to worry about like the battery dying. It can also, through USB, connect directly to your computer, and it will output 720p, HD signal to your computer and be able to be seen as a webcam. So that's kind of where I started. But I will tell you, I ran into a bunch of issues with that setup. And the biggest issue I had was syncing between the audio and video. So I would be speaking and there'd be like a slight delay sometimes between like the audio and the video setup. And it was, like some people didn't notice, I noticed it, but the problem was it was inconsistent. So, for example, Ecamm actually has the ability to add a little bit of audio delay to your video. So if you find that your video is like 4 frames out of sync, you can just, you can set that thing in Ecamm. But I was finding that it was actually very variable. Like even throughout the video, the sync would go in and out. So I decided to invest in a piece of technology that was kind of controversial, that I kind of did a bunch of Google searches and video searches and people saying like, hey, is this worth it? Is it not worth it? So I figured, hey, look, I'll get it off of Amazon. I'll try it. If it doesn't work, I will give it back. And it seems like such a nothing piece of equipment, but I tell you, this solved so many problems for me. And that is a thing called an Elgato Cam Link. I actually have the box. Hold on a second. I actually have the box right here, so I'll show you what it is. It's like a box. It's like a little USB dongle, and what it does is it takes the HDMI output from your webcam and puts it through as a USB signal to your computer. So just it has you can see here, if I show you like the picture here, you can see that there's like an HDMI input that goes into the kind of the back end there, and then the USB side goes into your computer. The benefits, people use this, the primary benefit of it is that it will actually allow you to take advantage of the full 4K resolution of your webcam. So it will take in the full 4K resolution and it will put out 4K worth of resolution into your computer. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm just getting 720p. You get the full K resolution. But I've seen some videos online of people using this where they actually do get a higher video quality as well. Like the colors are better, they're brighter. What's coming out of your fancy Sony camera is still really good. But this quality is a little bit better, number one. But number two, the best thing about this thing, it magically fixed my audio and video sync issues. I don't know how it did it, but for that, and it's like you're paying like 170 bucks Canadian for this little dongle. It was, I would have paid twice that, right? Because like fixing this audio sync issue, and again, you might not have audio sync issues, but if you do, I would highly recommend trying this Elgato Cam Link. So A, you're getting the most out of your camera, and B, it could solve these issues. Maybe it's just because it does some hardware processing that it kind of takes the load off your computer and makes things a little bit easier. So that is my level 2, and we haven't even, so we got, what do we got? We got hardware, we got some software, we got the microphone, camera, so a bunch of the big things. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of like the level 3, right? Like what would you do? Level 3. And for you, if you're in a dark space like mine where you don't have control over the lighting, then I would do this sooner. And so what I have staring at me in the face are two Elgato. You can see I was going with Elgato just as a brand name. By the way, you don't have to go with Elgato as a brand name. I liked it because Elgato makes the Stream Deck, and I thought, okay, if I use everything that's like Elgato, then everything will just work better together. But you don't need to. And in fact, I think you can use a Stream Deck to control all sorts of things. But I got these two lights, which you can see here in the photo. My Elgato Key Light Air. There's another product called an Elgato Key Light, which is like much brighter. It's a little bit bigger. These Key Light Airs are great lighting for smaller spaces like mine. And everything is Wi-Fi enabled. They're controlled through software. I can control it through the Stream Deck. You can actually control the temperature of the lights, not color, but like I can make them like whiter light, warmer light, the brightness I can change. And you just you have to play around with it, right? One is kind of closer to you. I think it's like, one's the key light, one's the fill light. And you can see, like, depending on the environment, I'll let you figure this out. You could get away with one light probably. But people typically recommend sometimes two lights. So I have these two lights. You can see one is behind my big computer. One is actually on this kind of like gooseneck dongle that I actually have clamped to the table that I used to actually use to hold my iPad. So my iPad used to be there on the left-hand side of my my laptop, and it used to be there, and I don't use it anymore. But because I'm at the edge of my desk and I don't have a wall kind of right beside my laptop up there on the left-hand side, attaching this key light to this gooseneck, flexible clamp was really, really helpful. I did have to buy like an extra like $10 connector, but the nice thing about Elgato stuff is that on the back end, all the connectors are kind of standard, so you can just get like whatever fasteners you need, and it will, kind of take care of everything for you. So that's going back to the presentation here. That's the key light area. They're not super cheap. They're $160 each. A lot of these things, I think some of these things I got like on Boxing Day or New Year's, or they're like on sale. But again, if you have good lighting, you may not need these. And certainly there are much cheaper lights out there if you just go on Amazon that you can get if you're trying to save a few bucks. And lots of people leave reviews on these things, and they're good. So that is the lighting. The next thing was actually, in my view, kind of important, is the teleprompter. Now, you'll notice here in this view that my Sony ZV10, which you can see out there, is clamped into the back of a teleprompter. And the teleprompter has two components. There's just like the framework of the teleprompter, and then there's the little monitor that sits inside the teleprompter. Now, for me, the teleprompter that I actually ended up going with was, go back here, was from a company called Caddy Buddy. And I think this is like a small business based in Colorado. I think it was recommended to me. I think they make them by hand, like it's when you buy this thing, like the guy says, hey, I'm like Mike, and if you have any problems, like let me know, it's my company. And I paid about $165 for this. There are lots of teleprompters out there, and I actually used to use a small one that clamped to my phone. The thing I like about this one is it's nice, it's sturdy. You will still need, for example, to have like a little tripod, and I haven't listed that here. There's like a little tripod that I got off of Amazon, which you can see in this photo. That's kind of like, that the camera is kind of sitting in. I think that may have been like a $40 tripod. It's like a desk tripod, so it's short, sits on the desk, and I had this teleprompter. Now let me just explain, why do I have the teleprompter? The teleprompter serves a very important purpose. It's so that I can look you in the eyeball when I'm talking to you right now, and I'm not looking down at my screen, like my screen is here, I'm not looking at the slides. I can put a bunch of stuff on this teleprompter screen. I can look at you in the eyeball where I make that eye contact, I can make my point, and it creates a whole different intimate experience with your audience, like versus like when you're looking off to the side at your monitor, or you're looking down at your presentation. Like I can look at you, and that creates a high degree of visual engagement. You just got to get used to looking at yourself a little bit. But the teleprompter has been amazing, and it's kind of like a little extra bonus screen, because once the teleprompter screen is connected to your computer, you can throw stuff up there. Like you can drag stuff onto it so you can see it while you're doing stuff on the screen. But it's invaluable when I'm doing my Zoom meetings where I can kind of see people, make that eye contact. It adds a ton in terms of that visual engagement and interest. So the first thing is you need the teleprompter. Again, there's lots of different options there. Someone recommended the Caddy Buddy, so I went for it. And one thing I should actually mention, because you're gonna unshrink wrap this, and you're gonna come to the realization it's not exactly how David showed you. So the Caddy Buddy actually comes with a fabric hood that kind of goes over the kind of from the front of the teleprompter and goes over the back. What I found was my camera kept overheating, and it kept shutting off. Like sometimes it would take an hour, sometimes two. And so to prevent that, I needed to create a little bit of like open air behind it. Sometimes you can actually pop the screen out of the camera a little bit just to create a little bit more airflow. But instead, I actually decided to build my own enclosure, which is what you can see there with this kind of, literally, I went to the dollar store. I bought black dollar store foam board, and I made a little engineering problem out of it. I created this little hood. out of it where the camera shoots through the back. And that solves my need. The camera never overheats. It's actually, I feel like, a lot cleaner look. So with a little bit of foam board, a little bit of measurement ingenuity, and electrical tape, boom, you got like a hood there. But, you know, again, depending on your camera, you might be totally fine with the kind of the fabric hood that comes with the Caddy Buddy. It's great because it just drapes over everything. Depending on the temperature of your room and the setup, though, you might not be able to get away with it. So I did a little bit of arts and crafts project there. Now, what actually sits inside the teleprompter, for example, if I were to go back to this slide here. So if you see what's sitting inside the teleprompter, you can see my buddy Jason Bay there, kind of off into the distance, kind of smiling at me. That's a little monitor that sits in the tray of the teleprompter. Now, when I first started, that little monitor, I just actually threw my iPad up there, right? Because like I said, okay, I can extend my iPad as a second monitor. Let me just try to throw it in the teleprompter. But there's one big problem when you're using like an iPad or any kind of tablet, which is, you think about it, the teleprompter will actually reverse the image you're seeing. So when you're looking at someone on a Zoom and I'm just looking at your face, if my face was reversed and the bookcase was there instead of here, no big deal, right? But as soon as you have like zoom controls and things like that in your teleprompter, and now you're kind of moving your mouse in reverse and you're trying to like make it with it's a whole mess. So what you need is, you need a monitor that can plug into your computer that will has the ability to display whatever it's going to display in a mirror image. And so this little monitor that I have, which is like a 4K 10-inch monitor that sits in the tray of my teleprompter, can output this mirror image. And then when it spits it back to me in the teleprompter view, as I'm looking at you all now, it looks normal, right? So there's a feature on that little monitor. So it's a high quality monitor that has the feature to do that mirror image input reverse. And that's what you don't get with like a cheap tablet. So unfortunately, I couldn't find a better solution for this. I basically just went with, let's go back to the PowerPoint. I just went with what someone had recommended to me. So unfortunately, I feel like this particular piece of hardware is a little bit more expensive than it needs to be or should be. But I ended up buying this monitor. It's 10 inches. It was $400 Canadian, which is like crazy when you think about it. But it is a 4K 10-inch monitor that ironically, I even can't run at full resolution because it looks too small when I'm on the teleprompter. I think I even just run it at 720p. But this allows me to kind of have this nice teleprompter view. I can see people in the teleprompter. I can drag people up to it. And that is connected to I was just checking, through a dongle to my computer, also via HDMI. So the teleprompter monitor connects to HDMI to my computer. I have a dummy HDMI port that I use for my presentations. And then the HDMI feed from my camera comes in through the Elgato Cam Link as a USB. So I for this setup, you kind of need two, if you want to do what I did with the dongles and stuff, you need two USB ports. And in fact, this Mac that I'm using has a native USB port already built in. Sorry, HDMI port built in. And then I'm using a big fat dongle here that has a whole bunch of inputs, one of which is an HDMI, and that is doing it for me. So that's kind of like the level 3 setup. The only other thing that I had, and people do all sorts of things for visual interest, is the light strip that you see behind me, which again, if I'm going back to my control deck here, it's an RGB light strip, so I can actually make it like whatever color I want. I can probably make it cycle through the colors if I wanted. It goes behind the bookcase, up over the bookcase. It's very similar to kind of like the cheap light strips that I know my kids have in their room, except you guessed it, this one is made by Elgato, so it's more expensive. But the nice thing is it's all Wi-Fi enabled and it works right through all the software on the computer and the Stream Deck. So that's why I like it. And it creates a little bit of contrast, a little bit of visual interest. I could probably put like some things on the windowsill here behind me. I could put some stuff probably on the bookshelf behind me to create a bit more visual interest. But for now, as a guy, I'm kind of, I have paler skin from sitting in the, in the basement. I wear my black Cerebral Selling t-shirt all the time. I feel this creates enough visual interest for the time being. But I wanted to just have something, because you'll see in some of my videos, like if I turn it off, it looks okay. Like it looks a little bit, earth tony across the board here, but if I turn it on, it creates a little bit more of that visual interest. And the camera does a really good job of also like adjusting the colors for me, which I could always correct and adjust through eCam. I feel like I need to take a break now, but that's and so actually back to the I'll show you back to the slideshow if you just want to kind of see that last piece. It's called the Corsair Elgato Light Strip. It was $80, and that's what I got. Now, one other piece of optional equipment, the laptop. I will tell you that when I started with this setup, I had a MacBook Pro, an Intel MacBook Pro, like an i7 that was maybe like a year old. And I found that whenever I would do my presentations with all this stuff going on, the fans were coming on. Like, it doesn't take much for those Intel MacBooks to spin up the fans. And it was very distracting. It didn't distract in terms of like the function. Like things still transitioned, all of my buttons still worked fine. But it was just like a lot of the noise and maybe some of the sync issues were maybe caused a little bit sometimes by that Mac processing power. So I think my wife needed a new computer, so I gave her my MacBook Pro and I invested in what you see here on the screen, which is a new MacBook Pro M1 16-inch. It's a M1 Pro, not the Mac. It's like whatever the base MacBook Pro 16-inch was. I was thinking of speccing it a little bit higher, but to be honest, it was the pandemic and it was months before you could get like a custom spec one. So I went with this. I have to tell you, like, this is a beast. It's fantastic. You don't need anything more with all the setup that I have here. I have never heard the fans come on. Everything is slick. And to be honest, as someone who's always worked with like 13-inch laptops before, having like a 16-inch laptop actually makes this super usable for like actual stuff, right? You want to edit a video. 16 inches of space is actually really, really good. And I have no qualms about like taking this on a plane or traveling with it because most of us nowadays are still like, we're still working from home. So it's fully transportable enough. And I love the fact that Mac, they did away with all like the ridiculous touch bars. There's an HDMI. There's a do not disturb button, like right on the keyboard, like, the MagSafe power adapter. Can't say enough about this. It was 1,000% worth the investment. But again, I will leave that up to you depending on, what you have in place, your processing power. Because again, compared to all the stuff that I had on the list here, which is like a lot of stuff if you add it up, you add yourself another, I think I have it here in the bill, the MacBook Pro, and now, it's another few grand, right? So I would say like leave that completely up to you. I know actually it's so funny. I know my head is blocking the picture of this little. Let me show you like a little live eCam demo here. So if I can move my head up in eCam live. You can see there's a little Lilliput monitor. But that is my tech stack setup. And I'll tell you, like, if you're looking for some advice, someone who is really, really great at instrumental, someone whose YouTube channel I really enjoyed watching as I was learning this, was a lady. I'm going to show you her YouTube channel now. A lady by the name of Kat Mulvihill. And I think when I started watching her, she had like 4,000 subscribers, which was not too long ago. Now she's got 10,000. I really, really like Kat. Great videos, great. She speaks at just the right level. She shows you all the stuff behind the scenes. She helps you create these great, engaging online virtual presentations. I then wanted to hire her to help me do this setup. And I reached out to her realizing that she literally lives an hour away from me. I'm in Toronto. She's in Waterloo, Ontario. And we've connected offline. She's wonderful. But I would say if you're looking for kind of more behind the scenes and more in-depth, this is actually her business. She helps people create these amazing online presentations, and she will go much deeper into OBS and Ecamm, all the latest updates, the tech. She tries some stuff out, and it's really cool to see even the evolution of her home studio as she's looked to build out all this stuff. So a great resource there for you. That's all I got for you today. I know this was a bit of a longer Facebook Live than I usually do in the Sales Lab here, probably 3 times as long. But I think for those of you who are looking to set up your your online home office to create those amazing, engaging presentations with that visual interest, which again, don't kid yourself, makes a huge deal. I think this will be worthwhile for you to kind of go through. And feel free to shoot me a note if you have any questions. Again, I'm on this journey of discovery just like all of you, figuring this out as I go. I went through a lot of pain to figure out whatever you see here today. If you liked it, it was very painful to get this all squared away. But I'm glad that I have it now, and it absolutely helps me in my business, and I hope it will help you. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time back in the Sales Lab. Take care, everyone.